Good evening. I can see people are starting to come in. Welcome this evening, this fine evening here in Melbourne for our second free short course of 2024. It's on Prep for Postgrad Study, the PPG. As always with these sessions, we will give it about 3 to 5 minutes to let everybody walk their way through the door, get their things settled. In the meantime, while you're thinking about it, if you can set your webinar chat to everyone rather than hosts and panelists, and you can think about whether you might have some questions for the question and answer sessions as well. And we will be right back with you in about 3 or 4 minutes or so. But just keep hanging on there for the moment. Thanks.
One way doesn't, just because you know that person does so well that way, doesn't mean that you will perform well under that same studying regime. And if you're one of those who hasn't studied in many years, the way that school taught you to study, or high school or uni, if it's been a few decades, it may be completely wrong for you because things have changed quite a little bit. There are lots of different ways to look at learning styles. Today, we're going to look at the VARC questionnaire, mostly because it's widely used, but also because it's free and easy to access for everyone. It's a pretty simple questionnaire that will ask you questions about how you learn best. So studies have shown that this questionnaire may not be useful to determine how to set out your classroom learning, but students have found it's useful to come up with strategies that work best for them in their own studies. And the thing I like most about it is that it makes you think about how you've previously learned best and potentially to even come up with some new ways to structure your learning. So just because previously you sat down and you read your textbook and you wrote some notes out, doesn't mean that that's necessarily the way you're going to learn best in the future, or that even you would have learned best in the past. So the questionnaire asks things like, I prefer a presenter or a teacher who uses diagrams, chats, maps, or graphs. B, handouts, books, or readings. C, question and answer, talk, group discussion, or guest speakers. And D, demonstration models or practical sessions. So as you may guess from these responses, the main aim here is to break learners into 4 categories of learner. There's visual, there's oral or auditory, there's read or write, and then there's kinesthetic. And can you guess how many times I'm going to mispronounce that? It's probably going to be a few. So learners can fit into multiple categories, or they might not identify strongly with any of them, and that's completely fine. But I think it's still worth looking at these categories and seeing where you might fit in. So I'll just quickly go over these categories and some of the tips and tricks that might work if you identify with those. So the first one there is visual learners. So as you may have guessed by the title, visual learners prefer depiction of information in visual ways. So it could be maps or diagrams, charts, graphs, flowcharts, any other graphical representations of information. So think back to your previous attempts to study and see if you found yourself distracted in class, but you paid a lot more attention when a diagram or a presentation was brought up. So it might be that this is a learning style you connect with and can benefit from. So it's not really about still pictures or photographs of reality or videos or PowerPoint presentations. It's about seeing information presented in a visually appealing way and rather than in a written format. So if you find yourself connecting to this learning style, you might look at your notes and try to include symbols and diagrams instead of keywords. You could use colors, highlight sections, or different fonts and layouts in your notes to draw your attention to key elements that you want to remember. If you're taking notes by hand, make drawings that emphasize your point, or use charts and diagrams to analyze and understand data. And remember to use white space. So space around a key point can really emphasize that point in your brain when you're looking back on your notes, especially if it's a really important quote, it's a really important thing that you want to remember, you will see that in your brain. White space is almost as important as the colors in the other images, if not as important or more so. You can use colors to separate topics into things so that when you look back on your notes, you can really immediately see what topic's being covered at one area. I remember back in the olden days when I was in high school and I was studying a novel, I had different colors of post-it notes that I allocated according to theme and would tag them in my book so that I could look up immediately what I was looking at. But also when I was reading through, I could remember what theme I'd allocated to that area. So there are lots of ways you can use color, font size, underlining, other elements to highlight what you're looking at. What you're trying to do is put in cues for your brains. So when you're thinking back to what you've read and studied, the colors or the diagrams or the other visual elements you've put in, add that cue into your brain and you help remember what it is you studied and learned. I hope that one makes sense to you. And let's move on to the next one, which is oral or auditory. So this one, if you can guess, they learn best by hearing information. In my example before of finding yourself distracted in class or lectures when somebody is speaking at you, an auditory learner wouldn't experience that same distraction. These learners may really excel by listening to lectures or podcasts or through conversation with others. So often when I've studied or had a really important document to read that I can't miss anything on, I convert that document to speech and have it read along while I have the document on the screen following along with the speech. So there are free websites, if you just search text to speech, that can do this for you, or even Microsoft Word will do it. If you go to the review tab and then read aloud, I do it all the time with anything that is a bit, dry to read or hard to read. It can be really robotic, or it can mispronounce certain words or use a weird way of pronouncing figures and numbers. But it's better than having nothing at all, because when you're reading something that is a journal article that it's on a topic that you've never encountered before, or it's something that's written in a bit of an obtuse way, or as I said, it's a bit dry or confusingly written, my mind tends to wander while I'm reading and I don't get as much out of it. If I have my computer read the words out loud, even if they awkwardly mispronounce something, it is just a lot easier for my brain to follow along. So the other thing that can be really helpful if you're this type of learner is conversations with other people. I mean, it's a good way for anybody to learn, but especially from this area. So have you ever been explaining something to somebody so that you can ask them a question, and in the process of asking the question, you come up with the answer? That's because sometimes the act of saying something out loud to somebody can help your brain work out the answers. One of the best ways to solidify information in your brain is to teach it to somebody else and force your brain to recall elements about it to help you make your points. Or if you're talking to somebody who knows as much as you, just having a conversation can really help you clarify your understanding. No matter what sort of learner you are, I do recommend talking about assessments with somebody rather than just reading the assessment and writing what you think they want to do. If you talk it out, you can often work out what they really want you to do and come up with what you think the answer might actually be. So the next learning style is read-write. These learners learn best when it's displayed as words and text. So they probably excelled back when you were just given a lot of text, printed out, and you had to read it and make notes. So they might take in information by creating lists. They could utilize titles and headings in their notes, and they're best suited to consuming books or articles and manuals, etc. They will take really good written notes, and unlike visual learners, don't need as much visual stimuli to be able to learn from their notes and to recall information. Some ways that read-write learners might lean on their learning style while studying is to reword the information they've read. So there's a really important point, they put it in their own words, which is something that everyone needs to learn how to do and something we will cover next week. They could create lists or glossaries as they study. So important new terms can go into the glossary. Lists of key facts, key elements can really help these sort of learners to recall information. Rewriting their notes will often have more effect for these students than for others, and they might create tables to organize their thoughts and organize diagrams, charts, and graphs into words themselves. So when I'm studying and I've created a lot of notes during a class or session, something I find really helpful in order to organize my thoughts is to try and condense those notes. So I won't get rid of the initial notes because obviously there might be something important in there, but I'll make an executive summary of my thoughts from a lecture or a chapter without relying on the chapter summary itself. And that can help me remember what I found really important as I read my notes back, and just help me recall information. Sorry, it's going to be a lot of my voice. If you get very tired of it, I'm really sorry, but let's keep going. The last style of learner is kinesthetic learners. They're tactile learners, and they learn best by hands-on experience. So think back to the times you've learned something. Do you often jump into a new computer program or a new skill by giving it a go and learning as you make mistakes? This could mean you connect really well with this learning style. So if you're learning about a concept in a subject or a university, a real life example will probably help you more if there's no opportunity to try a hands-on lab or experiment. Some subjects really don't lend themselves well to labs, so we can't have them. But real world examples are often really helpful, but particularly for this learning style. Another thing that can really help with this type of learning is doing an activity while you learn. So if you're watching a webinar, maybe you tune out a lot if you're just sitting there trying to take notes. You might benefit from being able to do an activity while you learn. Even something as simple as walking around, stopping occasionally to take a note when you found something important that can probably help you while you learn. It's important for everybody to take breaks while studying, but especially if you identify as this learner style. Sitting down and reading for an hour will probably not produce the results you really want. So when I have my notes translated into speech, as I said earlier, and I'm reading along, I tend to knit. It may seem counterintuitive to do something else while you study, but keeping a little bit of my brain active while I learn can really help to make sure that I don't tune out. So I can easily put down my activity, put my knitting down while I'm listening if I find something really important, I want to take a note about that, and then move back to my activity once I'm done taking those notes. And while I'm listening to something that doesn't need me to look at my screen the entire time, I'm wearing wireless headphones so I can walk around my house instead of sitting still. I find this improves my learning. So you might notice that I had an example for all of these types of learning. That's because people rarely fall completely into one category, and that's the only way that they can learn. There are a lot of different ways that people can connect with learning, and for successful study, I think one of the keys here is to find what works in your current situation and take the activities that are listed here, some of the activities you can find on the web, to improve your learning without necessarily relying on only one of these areas. All right, then, back to move on to the next section. If anyone has any questions, this might be a good time.
I was going to ask you a question. Is there any sort of idea about what percentage of people are in the different categories? Overall, I understand that we all do some of it. Like I know that I do kinesthetic learning if I'm doing something hands-on like woodwork, and reading, writing most of the rest of the time. But is there sort of do we have a split?
Interestingly, the split, the people mostly fall into the two you didn't mention. The first two, visual is most common and auditory is second most common, as far as I could see. But obviously some of this relies on what ways people have been able to learn. And I think, as you said, people fall into a lot of different categories. Reading, writing is my least used one. I find if I just read and take written notes, I won't remember anywhere near as much.
Yeah, I think that's probably because that was the way I had to learn, being an old university person.
No idea what you're talking about. So let's move on a little bit to talking about managing your time while you study. So most people who are studying postgrad are doing a lot else with their life at the same time. So you've got a full-time job and you've got a partner and kids and family and sporting commitments and social commitments and you're in a band or whatever it is. There's a whole lot that's going on that we have to fit into our lives. And you need to find and make time to fit study in if you're going to be successful. So Charles Sturt University that we work with, they recommend 10 to 12 hours of study a week per subject if you're going to be successful. And if you go to a university that has a similar session time frame, it's probably going to be very similar to the amount of hours they recommend. It does seem like a lot of time. And if you're like most people, you're like, where can this fit into my schedule? This might be where a time audit could be helpful. So think of your time like a budget. You've only got so many hours in a day, and try as we might, really can't fit 4 hours of study into one. You've only got limited hours. You have to use them where they fit. So make a list of all the things you spend your time on in a week. Try and include everything. Work out what else goes into your week. You might have 40 hours of week, but then 10 hours of travel and your family and, doing the dishes and cooking dinner and social life and exercise. This fills up the rest of the time. So triage those activities, work out what takes up a lot of time, how important it is, how vital it is, and make a schedule. Often you'll find out, there are moments in your schedule that necessarily you're spending a lot of time on something that doesn't necessarily have to be there. Work out when you might have free time to study, and also if things get hectic, where are the things you're going to cut? Because obviously, if you do 10 to 12 hours a week, you will hopefully not have to do more than that in a week. But sometimes life, throws a curveball at you. Someone gets sick, something happens, and you have to cut something out. It's fine. You just have to work out what's the thing you need to cut out.
I think
So
this
next
is one
up,
of the most, I was going to say, this is one of the most important things for people coming back into study after a while, because everybody's life's really busy, and most of our students are in that category where they have families or they have jobs or all of the above, and often other leisure activities as well that they do every night. Like one of our moderators that would have done tonight plays netball on Tuesday, so they couldn't come along and do the work. And so it's very important, and we can't stress enough how important it is to have a really clear look at that sort of stuff before you actually get involved. And then, the first 4 weeks of any session are a good time to trial that out and see how it's fitting for you. We've had students say that they wait until everybody else is asleep and then they do all their work at night. Other people get up early in the morning. Some people do it instead of watching TV in the evening. There's all sorts of different ways of getting around it. You've just got to figure out what makes the most sense for you and to be comfortable about doing it before you get involved too much. Sorry, Chantelle.
No, absolutely. Please interrupt anytime you feel you have something to say. And absolutely, that's true, because when you look at your schedule and go, I don't have 10 hours in this week to fit in study, you may have it, but it takes time to look at your schedule and work out where you can fit this in. And once you've worked out what you have to do, what's on your schedule, it is time to actually make that schedule. It's not set in stone. Obviously, things go awry, but it's really good to at least have a weekly plan for when you're going to be doing these key activities. So when you're studying, it is really good to do it in tiny doses, small doses. And we can speak a little bit more about that later, but you will have much more success studying if you can study in time blocks, less than, say, a few hours long. That's not going to work for you most of the time, especially if you can do it often, like every day. Maybe you have an hour on the train every morning, and that's a good time to do some study if you get a seat. Or you could schedule an hour after the kids go to bed, but before you're so tired you can't keep your eyes open. If you can study every day, you're going to remember so much more information than if you go, okay, I've got 8 hours on Saturday, I'm just going to study in that 8 hours. If you spread those 8 hours out, you will remember so much more. Once you've got your class schedule out that session. So how much reading and work is there to do, and how long do you think it will realistically take you to do it? When are your busy weeks at work or with your family? Do you have a week during the session where one of your kids has his birthday and somebody else has netball finals? You're not going to get much done during that week, maybe. But also work out when you might have a little bit of breathing room so that you can fit a little bit more in. That other one, being realistic, is one of the really important ones, and it's really hard for everyone to do it for themselves. Do you think you can study every morning before work, or will you snooze the alarm and then get worse sleep than you would normally get, feel really guilty about not getting up? Unfortunately, I'm in the latter category, and I absolutely had to ban myself from saying, I'll get up early and finish that. I just have to finish it at night before I go to bed, because it turns out I just can't get up early to finish something. Be realistic about how long it's going to take you to do something. Don't pretend you can speed read a 10-page article if you've never been good at speed reading. Know your strengths, know your limitations, and plan for how it will actually work rather than how you hope it will work. And then you'll have better outcomes. And then reevaluate that plan. You made a plan at the start of the session that you would study an hour every day when you got home from work. And after a few weeks, look at how often has that happened and adjust accordingly. If you can't be realistic when you first made the plan, reevaluate after 2 weeks and work out if you're a good judge of your abilities. So Shane had that example of somebody studying when everyone went to bed. Great. That might work for some people, but I'm sure that there are some of you that would not work for. You say, I'm going to study for an hour when everyone's gone to bed, and then you go, or I could play computer games, or I could do this, and you just don't do it. Be realistic. Work out what works for you. So here's just a few time management strategies and tools. You probably heard the so this is not an exhaustive list, by the way. There are heaps out there, but I've just listed a few that might be helpful. The Pomodoro technique is one you've probably heard of. It was invented by Francesco Cirillo. Anyway, it's a time management method, and it's based on 25-minute stretches of focus work broken by 5 to 10-minute breaks. So after you've done 4 consecutive work intervals with those breaks in between, you get a longer break of 15 to 30 minutes. Each work interval is called a pomodoro, the Italian word for tomato, because the inventor had a tomato-shaped kitchen timer as a student. So I think this technique is really helpful for most people because we're actually not made to concentrate for too long at a time, which sounds counterintuitive considering tonight's webinar goes for an hour, maybe plus. But you do find you'll get distracted easily if you try and complete too much in one sitting. So having a set period of time allows you to concentrate better during those 25 minutes, and then you don't feel guilty when you take a 5 to 10-minute break in between each one. The next one is the Eisenhower matrix, and it's a way to organize tasks by urgency and importance. So you can effectively prioritize the most important work and deprioritize the least important. So using this while you study, you first work out all the tasks that you need or want to do related to your work, and sort them into 4 quadrants, 4 corners. The first one is the ones that are urgent and important, and this could be finishing an assignment that's due in the next few days or studying for the exam next week. The second quadrant is the ones that are important but not urgent, and that's reviewing notes regularly, researching for a project, those sort of things. Quadrant 3 are urgent but not important, and that's replying to a professor's email or checking your grades. And then the last one is quadrant 4 tasks. Those are neither urgent nor important. That's watching TV, that's playing a video game, whatever it is, it's not urgent or important. And next, I've got a tiny sample of apps, because there's so many out there that are designed to block out distractions while you study. So most people will be studying on their computer or a laptop that allows you to be distracted by the rest of the world. Opening up social media or a messaging app or a news site, that can become second nature when you're bored these days. And as much as we don't want people to be bored while they're studying, many will be, particularly when the article is a bit, poorly written or dry. So these apps are designed to be downloaded onto your computer, your phone, your tablet, whatever. And you can designate the time that you want to focus and the sites or apps that you want to block. Some even have the Pomodoro technique or other techniques inbuilt into them so that you can get 25 minutes of concentrated studying and then 5 minutes of a break. And these are just good ways to understand your own limitations, as I said earlier, I know that if I get bored reading something, I will automatically open up a new tab and open up messaging or whatever else. So it's good to remember what works for you and where your weaknesses might be. And if you have problems concentrating when you're on your laptop, maybe these could be a really helpful one. And literally any one of these could work, but there are so many more. So just Google, distraction blocker on, and you'll come up with something. Next up, we have time management for assessment. So time management we've talked about, but when you're actually planning out your assessments, it's really important to work out when they're due and schedule them into your calendar. I put them in a few days earlier, including also a second one a week earlier, just to make sure it's there. It could even go into your family calendar so that if you've got, kids and a partner, they know that, yes, you're dedicated, you're helpful, but on the day the assignment is due, maybe you won't be as present as possible. And the other one there is be realistic. Again, I think this is one of the most important ones when you're studying. Understand that if you're trying to write a 3,000 word essay, it won't take you an hour. It's going to take you a lot longer than that. Work out how long it will actually take you and plan for that. Plan for the research you have to do and the thinking you have to do beforehand. But also be realistic about what you can do. I think all-nighters are probably only for 22-year-olds. They are not for people who have a full-time job and a family. I did them when I did my undergrad. I could not handle them when I've done postgrad. Break your assessments down into sections and put those sections on the calendar. And we will talk a little bit next week about how to break an assessment down into sections, but break it down into sections that you need to complete before you can do the assignment. So yes, you're going to read all the required reading for the subject in those hours of work that you've done previously, but also work out, I've got to do further research. When am I going to do that? I have to plan out my essay. When am I going to do that? I have to write, this argument, this area of the essay. When am I going to do that? Put it into the calendar. Also, remember extensions are always possible. They are much more likely if you ask in advance and if you ask nicely. So if you ask on the day it's due and you say, I couldn't do the assignment, I need an extra week, you may get a no for that. But if you ask before it's due and you say, I'm really sorry, work happened, life happened, here's my reasons. Or if you're studying with us, you can get extensions with no actual documentation in certain cases. But if you ask early, you're much more likely to get a yes there. All righty then, let's keep going unless Shane has any more input there.
No, time management is really part of that thing, isn't it? And
yeah,
and knowing how long it's going to take is really difficult, I think, for the first couple of weeks. So it's often good to do a couple of the short courses and have a look at some of the assessments there, which are just quizzes, but it does give you a little bit of an idea, and you can do some practice ones. Because the other thing is to never forget about drafting assignments. If you're doing a multi-page essay type assignment, draft it. I never drafted anything until I had a typewriter or a computer, and my marks went up 2 grades as soon as I started doing that.
One of the interesting ones is if you've ever heard a story of someone who lost an essay, the computer failed or blah, 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 and had to rewrite it. It's always so much easier the second time and it's better.
Absolutely. I want a tender like that. Somebody came and turned off the computer system. I'd gotten up at 5 o'clock in the morning because, of course, I hadn't planned my assignment, which was a tender, in advance. I spent 3 hours doing it. The next person came into the office, turned all the computers off, and I hadn't saved any of it. And I had to start again, and I won the business.
I will talk a little bit, as much as I just said that you sometimes do better if you have to rewrite it. We don't want to do that. Next week, I will talk a little bit about how to save, where to save, what to do, all that sort of thing. Okay, so next bit, we'll just talk a little bit about balance, because one of the things I really want to highlight here is that, yes, we talked about how much things will be on your schedule and how hard it is to find the time. But I really do want to highlight the fact that if you only schedule work and study, or if you only schedule the things that look very important but hard to do, you won't make it. You can't study for an extended period of time without any free time, without any social outlet, without any fun time. So if you're not seeing space for fun on your schedule, have a look at the time audit and make sure that there aren't any times that you are wasting time and it's not enjoyable for you that you could have used. And I'm not saying that playing video games is completely worthless or that you should never do it. And I'm not saying that even social media is worthless. It can be really helpful for those sort of things to be used for downtime, but don't mistake poorly used time for downtime. So sometimes I'll have something I need to do and then I'll get caught up, TikTok or whatever it is, reading the news, and I won't get any enjoyment out of it. I won't get any downtime or relaxation out of it, but I'll still have used the time. And then you feel guilty. It's kind of like if you eat a bad donut and you're like, well, that wasn't particularly tasty and it was a little stale, but it didn't have any nutrients and it didn't make me feel good and it didn't satiate me. So in the end, it's like when you waste your time on something that doesn't actually bring any joy, that's poorly used time. Hopefully that one makes sense. And then the last one is harness the power of no. Yes, you still should have, be able to go out with friends, have social time, have family bonding time, have fun time. But sometimes someone will invite you to something and you're not that keen on it. When you're studying, if you're working full time, if you've got other things to do, sometimes you have to be able to say, oh, I'm sorry, I can't make it. I'm studying at the moment. I just don't have the free time for it. Remember that you can say no. Next up, just talk a little bit about managing stress while studying. I mean, managing stress while you do anything, but it is really important to, if you add something extra to your schedule, particularly if it's a packed schedule, to manage your stress. So avoid long periods of studying. I've said it earlier, I'll keep saying it. We're not made to study for hours at a time without a break. Break up your study into sections. Make sure you have, even if you're not using, say, the Pomodoro technique or anything, make sure that you have designated break times so that you can chill out in between reading an article or doing a thing. If you sit down and try to absorb all of the week's information in one go, you're not going to absorb much. Eat well and eat enough. So, eat what you want, but add what you need. Make sure that you're having the nutrition, that you're healthy, but also don't skip meals because you're studying. It is really important for yourself, to your well-being, to make sure that you're eating enough to fuel your brain, to fuel your body. Exercise can be really important, and not just for those who are kinesthetic learners like we talked about earlier, but going out for a walk, getting some fresh air, doing something, maybe doing some yoga, can be a really good way to break up your study, but also make sure that you remain healthy and present and available to study. And unplug from your computer. When you take a break, don't immediately jump into something work-related or into something else that is not particularly enjoyable. If you're doing a technique where you take 5 to 10 minute breaks while you study, get up and walk around, go outside if you can. Do something that's not looking at your computer screen, because your eyes can only take so much. Get enough sleep. I mean, we all need to remember this, even if we're studying or not. But if you get good sleep, you can absorb information a lot better. You will be a lot less stressed if you get good sleep, which brings it back to the, all-nighters are for 22-year-olds. Don't do them. Don't think that you should do them. It's a bad idea. Breathe. Really simple. But if you're finding yourself really stressed out, take a moment, breathe. Maybe do some meditation. Find it, there's YouTube videos, there's apps, there's other ways you can meditate. But find a moment to take a breath and relax. And then watch for the signs of stress. And this can be, heart rate, other physical signs of stress, or just mental signs of stress. But watch out for the ones that mean that you're feeling stressed? Are you binge eating food? Are you getting angry unnecessarily? Are you getting sad unnecessarily? This could mean that you're really stressed and you need to relook at that schedule. I think making sure that there aren't too many things on your plate and continuing to reevaluate that schedule to make sure that you're not putting so much stress on yourself that you can't handle it. And if you are, ask for help. You can ask for help with the people who are teaching your course, being like, I don't know how to answer this question. It turns out this assignment was really hard to do and I thought it would be easier. We'd much prefer you ask for help before you get upset. Even most universities have counselling services that are necessary, but also there are other counselling services you can reach out to. But remember that if you feel you are dreading your study or you can't get to it, it might be a sign that you need to ask for help. And again, like with the extensions, if you want to ask for help with your assessment, the earlier you do it, the better it's going to be received. If you contact your subject leader the night before it's due and say, I don't know how to answer this essay, they probably won't react as well as if you contact them a few weeks before it's due. I'll talk a little bit about effective reading here. So even though there was one of the learning styles that was just like they read and write and take notes really well, simply for most people, simply reading an article or reading a textbook chapter and trying to take notes is not going to be as effective as if you try to read critically and take in the material. So in order to take in data, you have to read actively. So you can highlight and make notes as you read so that you know what is being said. So rephrase sentences, make sure that you are stopping every few paragraphs to make sure that you're actually taking in what you're saying. Ask questions as you read. Who wrote this? Who did they write it for? What was the audience? And what did they want to achieve when they wrote it? Because these questions can really help you critically evaluate what you're reading, because not every source is, well, no source is unbiased. Everyone writes with bias, but not every source is something that you can trust. And sometimes asking these questions can really help you to evaluate those sort of things. Create diagrams that represent the work so that you're rephrasing it in another way, in a visual way. And remember to break up that reading time. Again, I keep saying, to summarize what you've written and what you remember. So don't even necessarily look back over what you've read, but take a time to summarize what you remember from what they've said, because those might be important things, but it also can highlight what you haven't remembered. And if you get to the end of it and you try and summarize it and you can't remember anything, you kind of have to read it again and maybe come up with a new technique as you're reading. It could be getting it read aloud, reading it out aloud yourself, finding another way to remember it, and then teaching it to somebody else. So this is one of the most effective ways to learn, is to teach somebody else what it is that you're trying to learn. Because when you do that, you're trying to explain to them all of the things that went into what you're producing, or what you've read, sorry. And they might ask questions and you have to remember those answers, or you have to recall what the answers were from what you've read. So there's a reading comprehension method that I thought we would go over. It has the very fun title of SQ3R reading comprehension method. It is a way to help people understand what they're reading, and it's named after its 5 steps: survey, question, read, recite, and review. It can really help you if you're new to studying, especially because we'll throw a lot of journal articles and websites and whatever else at you. And sometimes you just read through it and then you get to the end of it and you go, I don't know what that was. So to follow this method, you start by surveying what you're reading. So read the title, the introduction, the abstract, work out what they're going to cover, and read through any headings they have, subheadings, charts, maps, diagrams. Get a sense of what they're about to tell you. Then there's a question. So turn the headings for each section. So if it's a journal article or a textbook, there will be section headings. Turn them into as many questions as you think will be answered in that section. You can add further questions as you read through the work, but it's really good to work out what you think they'll be answering. And then there's read. Read each section and think about the question you initially thought they would be answering. Recognize that you need to maybe make new questions because you thought it would be different than what it is. And recite. So after you've completed each section, stop and try to remember the answers to the question you've asked. And don't move on until you're clear on these answers and you can remember them without reading through this material. And then the last one is review. Review those questions, the answers, what you learned. And you've got this whole, review the whole chapter, the whole journal article as a whole to work out the entirety of what they were saying. And even if you don't use this one, find a way to read whatever university articles or chapters or whatever it is they throw at you in a way that you're taking in data, because that's a big one. When you first start studying at a university level, often you just read through and we don't have many opportunities these days to read data that we're not necessarily drawn to without the big breaks that we get. We usually get an email at work and we have to answer a question. We don't usually get, 10 pages to read all at once and have to be able to synthesize all that information. Now we're going to note taking. So while you're studying, while you're in webinars, while you're in classes, you should always take notes, obviously. We know that that's really important. One of the things, though, to remember is that after you've finished the class, review those notes. So studies have shown that if you don't review your notes after a class, after a reading, you'll forget 40% of the information you've learned in the first 24 hours. And then after 48 hours or 2 days, you'll forget 60%. That means you only remember 40% of what you've learned. That's not a lot. Don't discount diagrams. So draw your own diagrams and make sure that you are putting the information you've read into a form that makes sense to you. Write notes. It doesn't need to be full sentences. It could just be a few words. Make sure that you're getting the key points down. Make it readable, but you can wait until the end to make it pretty. So if you're just taking notes, typing, absolutely just type it all out. And then afterwards, once you've got all the information, sorting it out into colors, into, making it into a format that makes sense to you can be a really good way to review that. And write questions to yourself as you study. When you read something and you go, but how did they work that out? Write that question, because maybe they'll answer it, maybe they won't, and you should find the answer. And when you take notes, one of the things, and I should have written a point about this one, but work out where you want to take notes and how you want to keep those. So when I take notes, I usually have Google Docs that I use. I put in all of the referencing information that's needed for the journal article, the textbook chapter, the webinar, whatever I'm watching. And then I'll copy quotes, I will put down key points, and it's all in one Google Doc that I have headings and links in, so that when it comes time to writing my essay, I get to the end of the class and go, okay, I've got to write this essay. I know there was a quote that I really liked. It's somewhere in that one document. I can usually just search through, or at least scroll through. Hopefully it's in a color that I understand, find that quote. So find a way that you really want to take the notes and make sure that they're accessible wherever you are. Make sure that you can read them. Make sure that they work in a style for you. I'm going to talk a little bit, unless that was Shane saying he has something to say.
Not necessarily. I was going to say often one of the things I used to find was after you'd taken the notes, one of the practices is just to rewrite them without looking at them as much as you can.
Yeah, the recall of whatever it was you wrote. And if you can remember, whatever you wrote down, you'll probably remember in 3 days. You'll probably remember in a week.
Exactly. While we're here, there is one question in the chat, which is Mukhtar is asking if there's only one extension allowed per session. I'm assuming.
No, there is not only one extension allowed per session. That would be a bit ridiculous, because sometimes people have multiple things that happen in a session. At IT Masters, we do have a thing where you get 1 7-day extension with no documentation, no reason behind it per session. So we generally don't get you to use it in the 15% assignment that's due before census date. But for instance, if you get to a 40% assignment and you just got busy and you let your studies go, which we don't recommend, but sometimes happens, and then you need an extension, we have the ability to get 1 per session, doesn't matter how many subjects you're studying, of just, I need 7 days, give me 7 days, which I think students find pretty helpful. But if you have other reasons, if work gets crazy, if you've got a new job or something like that, you can get an extension apart from that one, because we understand that postgraduate students have a lot of things they are currently doing.
Always
joking. This is my last point for today, is just a note about handwritten versus typed notes, because we're all different people. So there are benefits and negatives to both. I am fully tech brained, and that I take all my notes digitally. But unfortunately, studies have shown handwritten notes are better for future recall and comprehension. It's just something about writing it out in your own handwriting means that you remember things better. It is easier then to create diagrams and illustrations, and it is better for visual learners. And then there's digital notes. They're faster to create, especially for me, because I type faster than I handwrite. They're easy to edit. They're easy to back up. They're easy to share. I find them a lot easier, but that's just me. But digital handwriting can, and the studies are inconclusive, but can be a combination of the handwritten notes better for future recall and comprehension, but at the same stage, available on your tablet or wherever, so that you can easily back them up. And somebody did ask, is it right, will we remember better if we write in paper than typing in digital notes? It's just, I think the studies have said handwritten notes are really good for your memory. My handwriting is atrocious. When I was in primary school, I had my pen license revoked, never got it back, so I shouldn't be writing in pen. But anyway, I'm a bit of a rebel. But apparently handwritten notes are better for memory. But
which makes
this
sense.
is just
It's a much more physical thing, I think.
Yes, it's a physical thing. It ties you to it better, and also I think just your handwriting helps. Anyway, that's about it. I was going to quickly cover, so next week we will talk more about actually writing assessments, how to find references, how to assess references if they're good ones to use. Using the APA 7th style for referencing. We're just going to use that as an example, because that's what CSU uses. How to paraphrase and quote, because a lot of students who are new to studying are bad at that. And then we're going to have a little hands-on practice using Turnitin and working out what is appropriate in a document that you submit and what is not. And I have taken up exactly an hour, which I'm kind of impressed about my time management skills there. But that means we have plenty of time for questions, which we haven't got that many of.
We've literally got none at the moment. I think it is interesting, this, in that while this may seem to be a fairly dry sort of topic for everybody, it is the really important critical stuff about getting yourself prepared to get that master's or graduate certificate, so that you can actually move ahead with it and not be too stressed about it. And that's the key thing. We always aim to try and help our students be able to cope with this and all of the other things that are going on in their life. And so being able to use these tools and to think about these things clearly in advance puts you 3 steps ahead of the person that breezes their way through the course because they've got a big project on at work, and at the end they've got to study like mad to try and catch up. And of course, as Chantelle said, they forget 40 to 60% of everything 3 days later. So cramming doesn't really work these days. And they're open book exams anyway. So it's not about cramming, it's about demonstrating the way that you learn and how you've learned and how you can apply it, particularly in a lot of our industry-based subjects, which are very practically based and are given by people who work in industry. So you need to think about those sorts of things in order to start the courses. That doesn't mean it's harder. It just means it makes your life easier more than anything else. We find with these sorts of courses that they have relatively few people do them initially, but over a period of time, lots and lots of people do them. And we recommend to all our new students that they read through these and watch them on YouTube, where all of the information, some of the references and the slides will be put up on YouTube, including the recording from tonight, which I will apologize in advance. We missed just the first introduction bit. So we started exactly on the first real slide on the recording tonight. So apologies for that for anybody who's listening and has got to this and wondered what went on.
Sorry for maybe I should have been more clear when I was going to kick off. Anyway.
No, it's just me. Just me. That's normally the moderator does it, and I was very immoderate. But anyway, I think, do we have any other questions before we all sign off for the evening? It's been really great to have you along. We really appreciate people who take time out of their busy lives to come and listen to us. If there are no other questions, I think we will shut things down for tonight, and we will look forward to seeing you next week for the second and final installment of this course, which will have some really interesting things, including, I believe, a fair bit of or a bit of discussion about AI and its influence on study, which is very controversial at the moment.
Yes, absolutely. And that's definitely going to be part of it, especially with paraphrasing and using referencing, etc. One of the questions that we just got there, will you be able to share any example sample reports to refer to get some help on structuring our assessments? I'll talk a little bit about structuring assessments next week, because I think that's really important. And it's one of the ways that you can get easy marks when you write an assessment. And hopefully we'll have some samples to look at. Some good and bad ones. It's hard to get bad ones because no one really wants to be the person that you share a bad example for. But yeah, we will definitely look at it, at providing some of those.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very, very much, everybody, again. And we shall see you same bat time, same bat channel next week, 7 o'clock on a Tuesday night, Australian time. In the meantime, I hope you have a great week and get lots of things in your life that you enjoy. Thanks very much, Chantelle, for all your hard work in getting this ready and presenting so beautifully tonight.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.